A naked man awakens on a remote island just off the coast of Seattle, Washington, with no memory of who he is or how he got there. To him, the world appears drained of color. Everything around him is seen only in black and white. After wandering through the isolated shoreline for some time, he suddenly dives into the freezing ocean waters. Hours later, he is pulled from the sea by a group of fishermen passing nearby on their vessel. Realizing something is terribly wrong, they radio for medical assistance, and paramedics soon arrive at the scene to examine the mysterious stranger.
Who are you? What's your name?
Don't know.
Still perplexed about his identity and origin, the man goes to a police station later and tries to report himself missing, leaving an officer terribly confused. Then, as he walks out of the station, he catches a glimpse of himself in a shop window and is utterly surprised by the image, as if he had never seen his reflection in his life, and takes a moment to take it all in.
You know the way to Westlake Center? Go straight 0.3 miles, turning right on Pike.
The man suddenly realizes that he knows everything, except who he is, and heads to the library to test his discovery.
Ask me a question.
Hey.
It's an experiment.
What's the population of Morocco?
30,645,305. If you like.
0, 0, 0.
Original binary code for MS-DOS.
The man then learns of upcoming horse races from the newspaper and, using his profound knowledge of statistics, places bets and makes thousands of dollars. Following this, he goes shopping for clothes, names himself John Doe, and takes a social security number from a deceased person, and finds himself a place in a world that seems to have no idea of his existence. Then, once again, using his knowledge of the market, he purchases some stocks.
Okay, and you pulled that out of what crystal ball?
15 minutes.
After taking a crazy test drive in which he puts his technical and mechanical knowledge of cars to instantly learn how to drive, John buys a car and heads to a local food stand to get some food.
Which for you?
I don't know things that I'm supposed to know.
That evening, John wanders into a local piano bar called The Sea, plays the piano, and impresses the owner.
You wouldn't be looking for a gig, would you? My last guy left me high and dry. My piano's mighty lonely.
John then meets a realtor and buys a fully furnished loft.
I run a privately funded think tank.
This furniture.
Not bad for a man who began the day with absolutely nothing. The next day, at the bar, while watching a game show and entertaining himself by answering every question, John hears disturbing news.
Has confirmed that 6-year-old Jenny Nichols was in fact kidnapped.
Perplexed by his ability to see the little girl in color despite his colorblindness, John freaks out thinking she might be closer to him than he realizes and rushes to the police to offer his services, but a fed-up detective, Frank, dismisses him.
Wild guess. You're looking for a homeless guy about 6.5 feet tall, walks with a limp.
You some kind of clairvoyant or something?
Went to the bathroom during gym class. Never made it back to the kickball game. That's fine.
She's alive. But there's not much time.
The duo rushes to Jenny's school and John inspects it in detail.
This building's been renovated.
Yeah, well, so's my kitchen a dozen times thanks to the missus. Big deal.
Here.
Yeah, right. We didn't think of looking in the electrical closet.
Then, out of nowhere, the kidnapper jumps out with Jenny, startles John, and runs out while the police follow him. John gets up, picks up the small coin the abductor dropped while running out, follows him out, and takes note of the make and model of his getaway car. Meanwhile, at the police station, despite the progress in the case, Frank's boss, Lieutenant Jamie, is suspicious of John and warns Frank to be careful. On the other side, John meets Jenny's widowed mother, who thanks him for all his help. As John thinks more about Jenny and how scared and lonely she must feel, the more he relates to her as he feels exactly the same in the vast world, which hasn't even reported him missing, and wonders if the curious brand on his chest will lead him to find his answers. Later, John researches the coin he found, tracks it to a local motel where he's told the getaway purple Impala had been seen parked in front of one of the rooms. Meanwhile, the police learn about a black van lurking around Jenny's school, link it to a man named Max, who has priors involving minors, storm his house, and are disturbed to find it filled with pictures of young girls. Surprised by the interaction, Max engages in a shootout with the police and is gunned down. The police then do a thorough search of the house, but Jenny is nowhere to be found.
Frank, it's Doe. I tracked out a guy to a motel on this.
You find the girl? You're not going to. Because you got the wrong guy.
Elsewhere, John continues investigating on his own using the description of the Impala driver from the motel clerk and is surprised to see that all the clues lead to Jenny's late father. Hence, hoping to get to the bottom of it, he visits Jenny's mother and talks to her about him.
Your husband, what did he do for a living? Probably knew a thing about building codes, structural designs.
I really don't know.
Was he close to Jenny?
Despite the detective's resistance, John gets a signature authorizing the exhumation of the body from Jenny's mother.
Was your husband a vegetarian?
No.
Then this is not your husband.
Finally taking John seriously, the police put out alerts.
Hey! You! Nichols! Stop! Stop!
Desperate to catch up to them, John flies a helicopter, crosses the river, and locates the duo. Immediately realizing that the desperate father is dying of cancer, John decides to give him his freedom for his last few days of life and flies back with Jenny.
Shame is that helicopter only has seats for two.
Daddy says you're the mystery man here to fly me home.
So he was dead, then he was alive. Now he's dead again. You sure that's how it went down?
Sure as I know my own name.
Later, John returns to the food stand on the pier to try out what he likes, and just as he starts to enjoy his food, he hears something shocking.
Tommy?
And John returns to the bar and recounts everything that happened to Digger and Karen.
Maybe she's a family friend, sister. I mean, my wife. Anyway, by the time I got to the terminal, the boat was empty. But it was too late. I couldn't find her.
Elsewhere, Frank is called to examine a crime scene where a pool is found covered in blood, with seemingly no explanation as to where the blood came from. Later, while Frank studies the case at the station, John arrives to ask him for help.
I got a latent index print, fraction ridge patterns intact, and I was wondering if you could run it through the AFIS.
Look, this isn't some one-stop convenience center. I got my own riddle needs solving. How about a little tit for tat?
Frank takes John to the station and briefs him.
Pathology says it's fresh blood. Someone killed in the last 24 hours.
John jumps onto the roof to learn how the blood got to the pool, searches the compound, and finds a clue.
Hey, what do we got here? Ladder?
Gotta be dealing with somebody 130, 140 pounds. Companion Laprinoides, marsh bellflower.
My brother's got a ranch in Cedar, boy.
Frank calls back up and, together with John, heads to Scott's brother's house, but is shocked to find the man dead and hanging upside down with his blood draining from his body.
This man's been embalmed by a professional. Too jagged to be from a knife. They're from drain tubes.
The lieutenant arrives and proceeds to throw John off the scene.
He was alive while being embalmed.
Get him out of here.
Still desperate to find out his origins, John hangs missing posters of himself around town and, believing he's married to the woman from the pier, buys a wedding ring before heading home and spending the afternoon sketching the woman he saw. After discovering John's social security number was stolen from a deceased person, the lieutenant pays him a visit at the bar that evening, sees the brand on his chest, and, suspecting it to be associated with a criminal organization, warns him not to play a game with them. The next day, Karen goes to John's house and finds him obsessing over the woman.
How are you so loaded?
A timely futures investment from the Zagreb Croatian Exchange.
Then she finds a wall full of notes.
At what point do I start worrying about you cutting off an ear?
This makes perfect sense.
What meth lab did you drop by last night?
Don't you see, this is how I figure it all out.
Frank visits John with the results and asks him for help.
Other end of that finger must really be something. Bad guys are still on the clock, unless you feel like punching in your time card.
After getting the location of the man from the funeral home, the duo heads there, but as soon as he sees them, the suspect flees.
He was working on this totally rad reaction kinetics project.
Oh, well, give or take a few seconds, but who's counting? There he is.
Okay.
Display.
Latest white pages.
Let's go.
Elsewhere, while Mr. Pickford and Jade work, the office catches on fire. As the duo freaks out, Frank and John arrive on the scene in time to get them out, and John warns Mr. Pickford from using the fire extinguisher.
What's the matter with you? I could have put that out.
It's poison.
Well, how could he know that?
Class B.
John then chats with Jade.
Oh, Dad's got this whole walk-in closet full of skeletons and stress.
Jade, come on, let's go. Let's go.
Later, Karen visits John at his house and, after detailing that she's been fired from her job, asks John to hire her as his assistant, but he refuses. John then continues obsessing about the woman from the pier until he suddenly gets an idea about the case and hacks into the government database.
I discovered container C48744 was accounted for in Pickford's outgoing cargo inventory, but
it never made it to shore? That's great. You got missing shipping crates.
The container is soon recovered, and everyone is shocked to find it full of dead illegal immigrants. Hoping to find the bottom of the horrific ordeal, the team continues its investigation.
I wonder how long these Pickford brothers were smuggling immigrants on the side.
Wait. He's been stalking his every move.
While the police rush to the safe house, John stays back, studies the picture, and figures out where the assailant is going. He then rushes there as fast as he can.
You! How did you get in here? I know what happened to your daughter and brother.
However, the suspect succumbed to his injuries. Later, the lieutenant speaks to John.
John Doe, maybe I was wrong.
I get lucky every now and then.
Are you just realizing this, Lieutenant? Later, John changes his mind and hires Karen as his assistant. Then, he finds a newspaper article written about his aiding the police and posts it on his wall of discoveries. However, unbeknownst to anyone, the same article finds its way to a mysterious organization that studies it thoroughly. Still desperate to learn more about himself and his origins, John visits a psychotherapist and undergoes hypnosis, but he's utterly disappointed at the outcome, as he still cannot remember a single thing about his past. Elsewhere, a homeless man finds dismembered bodies and alerts the police, who rush to the scene and study it thoroughly.
Perk's blood must have been on the murder weapon and got transferred when he sliced it.
You're right. We do have a magician on our hands.
While John shares his problems with Digger and Karen at the bar, Frank comes and presents John with the seemingly impossible case. The duo then heads to the psychiatric facility to visit the suspect.
Did you hurt somebody?
Yeah. Sorry. Good now.
Following John's theory, the duo searches for Dan's twin, Christopher, and goes to the address of his last recorded job.
Looking for a Christopher Beauregard?
Well, because Chris, well, he's dead.
Did he ever say anything about having a brother or a twin?
Interesting how you bent over at the waist to pick up that mop. You're Christopher.
Both Polly and Dan are taken into interrogation.
I can't tell you what's inside any more than I can tell you what's inside from their monozygotic chromosomes to their polygenic traits.
Then, the lieutenant and Frank discuss the case.
I put in for search warrants on Polly's apartment and work locker. Yeah, but how did our victim jeopardize Bowen's well-being? We don't even have a connection between the two of them yet.
I think we should watch it.
Meanwhile, Karen organizes a speed dating event at the bar for John, but it fails miserably as John can't tell the women anything about his past. John then goes to see Dan's doctor, Dr. Matthew Jansen, and asks him about the methods he's using on Dan.
It's irrelevant. He's a psychophysiological coper. The mind's a locked door. Don't you want the key?
Then the doctor takes John to a sensory deprivation chamber and puts him inside, sedates him, and guides him through the taped session. However, later, John wakes up, finds that he's been locked in the chamber, and frantically bangs on it until a security guard lets him out. However, once out, John is confused to learn that the doctor is nowhere to be found.
That's odd. The tape's gone.
Where's the tape?
While searching for his tape, John finds Dan's session tapes, takes them to the station, and shows them to Frank and Stella.
Okay. Wait. Oh, wait.
Later, a dismembered body of a woman is discovered, and after some research, the police learn that the victim used to work in Child Protective Services. The police then head to an abandoned Child Protective Services building and are disturbed to find another dismembered body.
Angela, meet Deirdre.
John retrospectively puts everything together and goes to speak to Dr. Matthews' nurse.
Miss Miller, is there anything you can tell me? Anything at all?
Thank you, Mr. Doe. I'll see to it that he's looked after.
John waits in the forest, and just like he suspected, the nurse comes and tries to murder the man. I didn't see that coming at all. After an intense chase, John catches the nurse.
Well, enlighten the weaker mind. How'd you know it was Miller?
Born without a fingernail.
So she's their mother?
The distraught nurse is then interrogated.
I don't think she killed Jansen.
What, she got a twin now too?
I didn't kill Dr. Jansen!
While John continues to study the doctor's disappearance, unbeknownst to him, the men from the mysterious company kill and bury Dr. Matthew and flee with John's file. One day, while John's out using his market knowledge to make unprecedented profits, Karen sneaks into his home office.
Holy wingnut. What is this place? Colin, you would not believe.
Hoping she would understand him better, John shows Karen his scar, which scares her into running out of the loft. Elsewhere, at a construction site, a body is discovered inside a barrel.
You got an ID for him?
No sign of clothing, fingerprints long dissolved. Said she's been down here at least 30 years.
Frank, Stella, and Jamie search through the DMV records for the owner of the only house that used to be on the lot and are flabbergasted to find a man who looks exactly like John. John is called in and asked about the situation, but he calmly convinces the detectives that anyone could have accessed the DMV to make it look like him.
So you accessed my license.
John slowly approaches Agnes.
Mrs. Prescott.
Murderer.
How does she know him? Why would she say something like that? After the ominous interaction, John freaks and returns home still panicked. Seeing this, Karen suggests he might be a time traveler and takes him to her professor at the university.
So what you're saying is time travelers would have to have their memories erased?
There is one way to find out for sure. Get an MRI.
In the MRI machine, John freaks out, forcing the technician to stop the test.
You always like this?
It's complicated.
Now remember to lay still. It's gonna get loud in there.
I know.
Then, the test is restarted.
Something's interfering. Mr. Doe, do you have any piercings? Definitely something metal inside him. It's distorting the magnetic field.
John?
Suddenly flooded by flashes of painful visions and light, John runs out of the room and heads home. There, John searches for a metal detector, which goes wild, indicating the presence of metal inside the brand. At the bar, he hangs out with Karen, who's worried about him, and makes a sudden realization.
Are you even listening?
I was upstairs in my loft just a second ago.
Then, Frank comes to the bar to update John on the curious case.
INS records show she worked for him for over 5 years, so I figured it went down like this.
The husband killed the housekeeper to cover it up.
There's no paper trail on him at all until 1960.
Like he appeared out of nowhere.
Frank and John visit Elizabeth's cousin, Vanessa.
How can you be sure Prescott killed her? I mean, did you know him?
As soon as he found out about the baby,
What baby?
I put him up for adoption.
What a horrifying way to learn of your potential parents. John spends hours searching for the baby's picture through the database, suddenly gets hit with the light visions, blacks out, and the next thing he knows, he finds himself next to a bloodied body of Vanessa.
Scotty beams you over to Vanessa's. Is that what you asking me to believe? This Ollie North routine is getting real old real fast, John.
Jamie and Frank then discuss John's arrest.
I can't go out on a limb for a guy who just fell from the clear blue sky. Just can't sell a hunch upstairs, Frank.
Then buy me some time.
The duo gives him the benefit of the doubt and gives him access to the lab to demonstrate his theory.
Now, given the angle of the wound.
Okay. You have 12 hours to find out who really did this.
John thanks Frank for his trust and opportunity. John investigates the body in the barrel, tracks the barrel to a local vineyard, and storms the mansion there together with the police. However, everyone's shocked to find no one but a very ill man.
Is this man Stephen Prescott?
No, his name is William Leverton. This is his house. What do you people want?
I'm sorry. I think we've made a huge mistake.
John suddenly blacks out and finds himself in the car, driving away with Frank.
Turn the car around. Leverton is Prescott. He's the killer. It was still on factory settings.
Uh-huh. What?
He's faking. He didn't even use the oxygen. It's a bogus visual to gain an alibi.
The duo quickly returns and learns that Scott, who had disguised himself as the dying man, is headed to the airport and engaged in a car chase. After minutes of an intense chase, Scott's car flips and burns, leaving John staring at the ashes of his hopes of learning his past. Later, John discusses the case with Karen.
Karen, I saw these figures. A woman, maybe.
If Prescott was your father, then wouldn't that make the woman they found in the barrel your...
John visits the cemetery and somberly puts flowers on Elizabeth's grave. John goes to the hospital for a check and is told that he's in perfect health, but is left with more questions than answers.
Have you considered the possibility that you're suffering from an emotional problem?
While there, John helps patients, diagnosing them and giving them advice, but is thrown out and advised to get therapy. Elsewhere, a naked, shivering man is discovered in the Pacific Ocean who doesn't know his name. At home, John gets a notification of the discovery, learns that the man is being taken to the local hospital, heads there, disguises himself as staff, and approaches the man.
We got you too.
Before answering, the man seizes, and John is thrown out. John continues working on the case from home.
Karen, he looked at the scar on my neck and said they got to you too.
Oh my God. There's some scary guy down there. Oops. My bad.
John sneaks back into the hospital, finds the man gone with his blood soaked, and the police are called. As the scene is inspected closely, signs of struggle and a missing cabinet become apparent.
Saline solution from his IV line. Magic trick. How do you get a body out without the audience noticing?
They track down the license plate to an address.
An address on those plates.
Whoever owns the van has the man from the hospital.
The duo then enters Ray's house.
What do you want?
Why is the truck registered in your name?
What charity's after adult males ages 20 to 30?
Oops.
As the duo leaves, a black car follows them closely. At the police station, Frank updates Jamie.
Brunellis' computer was searching hospital records for healthy men in their 20s. No medical problem.
Later that night, John is called to the scene of Ray and his wife's murder and discovers that their tongues have been cut out.
I think I'm connected to the guy they took from the hospital.
So this is some kind of conspiracy?
Paint chip.
John traces the paint chip to an abandoned building, where someone follows him into a room and locks him in. Luckily, John uses his wit to break it open.
Where's the man from the hospital?
A curious cat.
Why have you been following me?
Who's been following who, John Doe? To find the truth? You'll have to experience it yourself.
The man convinces John to take the injection, and the next thing he knows, he finds himself in a makeshift operating room on a boat, being prepped for surgery. John manages to escape and sends an alert to Stella. He then goes around inspecting the boat and is shocked to find a room full of bodies, including that of the man from the hospital, Scott. Unfortunately, John is soon caught and brought back to the operating table.
There are desperately sick people in this world who need my help. People of value. I duped you. You're so gullible.
Luckily, the police arrive just in time, and the transplant doctor, Dr. Alistair, is arrested.
We need to discuss the terms of withdrawal.
Later, John goes to the station to speak to Dr. Alistair, but is disappointed to find him dead in his cell. On his way out, John runs into Scott's father.
Mr. Nathan, he made something of his life.
That was really nice of you, John. It really made the grieving man happy. John then speaks to the lieutenant.
I know you're just trying to help, but it was asinine. You could have gotten yourself killed.
It was worth it.
I won't ask you any more questions about you, your past. I'll make you a deal.
A burglary is reported at a local museum in which a security guard named Cheryl is killed, and the police are called.
The gallery is magnetically sealed and bolted from the inside every night.
Wait a second.
Seeing the complexity of the case, Frank calls John, and the investigation begins.
One shot was fired, and it's only the victim's prints on it, so there must have been a struggle.
John amazes everyone by demonstrating how the assailant managed to remain invisible while killing the guard, and promises to find out how he escaped undetected. While studying the case at home later, John shares it with Karen, who suddenly becomes nervous and runs out of the loft. Later, Stella finds surveillance footage from the museum, and everyone is shocked to see Karen exiting the building seconds after the robbery.
Come on now, Karen. You gotta help me connect the dots here. Murder in the first degree is life.
I didn't do anything like that.
Jamie then joins a shocked John and enlightens him on the background of his assistant and friend.
I know she works for you, but how well do you really know that girl? We ran a background check. She's seen her share of trouble.
But you know everything better than you know yourself, John. Karen is then arraigned.
I'm trying to make it a little easier. Your arraignment's in an hour. Have fun with the DA.
John then suddenly shows up and opts to represent Karen.
Now, if you will just pass me her case file.
Hold on a second.
Once he's given permission and the court-appointed lawyer steps out, John gets started.
What size pant do you wear?
Objection. Relevance.
My client was seen exiting the building 30 seconds later. There is certainly no way Miss Kowalski could be guilty of these accusations.
You want her for making out with her boyfriend after hours. Get something concrete.
Later, John visits Karen at her apartment to discuss the case and hears a message from a man named Max, who is on the suspect list.
I'm doing a photo shoot here at the studio all night. Try and swing by, would you? It's important.
Then, Frank gets a disturbing call.
I think Max Clark's your guy.
John and Frank go to photographer Max's loft, find a picture of Karen, and then bring him in for questioning.
So, Max, the night of the 11th, where were you?
I was working!
Snap pictures while some guy stands by with a whip?
Later, when John returns home, he finds a furious Karen who hails Max, resigns from her job, and storms out of the loft. The next day, John meets the medical examiner, Nance.
Our people did not lose Cheryl Evans' body.
But I saw the coroner's assistant at the museum.
John then breaks into Max's house and confirms his suspicion that Max had disguised himself as a coroner and stolen Cheryl's body.
Okay, Max, where are you hiding it?
Further investigation leads the duo to a local meat plant, where they find the fake coroner van with Cheryl's body. John theorizes that the robbers have hidden the ring inside her to escape and brings the body to the medical examiner.
Clark must have had her at gunpoint hidden behind the sculpture. Oh, man, what a way to go.
Actually, she was ready to go either way.
After mentally reviewing the case, John changes his original assessment, comes up with a new one, and demonstrates it.
Clark poses as the coroner, comes in later and scoops her off.
She could have danced a jig back there for all we know.
John goes to make up with Karen, sees a picture of Max taken with the local youth, sees how connected he is in the community, and comes up with yet another idea.
There's something here more important to him than $1 million diamond. Cheryl Evans. She had a son.
John and Frank then talk to Max.
She was gonna pull this off either way. She said she didn't even need my help. It was for Eddie. She wanted him to go to college, make something of himself. No one got hurt.
Well, I'm sorry, Max, but a lot of people don't see it that way.
Later, John and Karen go to the museum and hang out. While hanging out at home, John hears a knock on the door.
Are you John Doe?
Hold on. Who are you?
Wesley Silva, your son.
John manages to get into the records room, studies the records, and explains the procedure to Wesley and his mother.
No, you and I were never, intimate, Mr. Doe. He was conceived by artificial insemination. The sperm bank has a very strict donor confidentiality policy. He's quite remarkable with computers, and his IQ, off the charts.
With the young boy by his side, John goes around town tracking down the donors, but they all lash out at him. Then, when he reaches the fourth guy, he finds him dead.
Coagulants show this guy's been dead for approximately 24 hours.
Frank and Jamie scold John for bringing a child to a crime scene.
I told him to wait outside.
Don't you know anything about kids?
Donor number 2, Dr. Elvis Braithwaite.
One of the donors, Dr. Elvis, is interrogated.
That was 10 years ago, sweetheart.
You entered college when you were only 13.
Must be lonely being so smart.
Then a couple of more donors are interrogated.
I'm a peaceful man.
Not sperm donor. Egg donor.
And with the rest unreachable, the trio of donors comes to the police station and gives samples for the test.
Gene-matched paternity test analyzes the buccal cells of the inside cheek.
They then discuss the rest of the donors.
Any one could be Wesley's father. The other, the killer.
Then, one of the donors is found dead, and the assailant escapes just as the police arrive. Then, John notes that Wesley has followed him there and goes to speak to him.
Hey, what color is it? I can't tell. I'm colorblind.
You see, I'm colorblind too. And they had this machine called an anomaliscope.
But that was a dumb idea. Forget it.
The donors move to John's house, and studying the case demonstrates how the assailant escaped. They then head to the house, find brains preserved, see a picture of Wesley among the other targets, and become alarmed. Police then rush to the police station, and John uses his wit to rescue a tied-up Wesley.
Well, I just talked to his mother. She's going to meet him over at the hospital.
At the bar, while John hangs out with the other donors, Karen brings them envelopes containing the results of the paternity test.
Why don't we open them all at once? On the count of 3. 3.
John then surprises Wesley and introduces him to his father.
Dante's your father.
Elsewhere, at the mysterious company, the woman in charge is presented with a picture of John and informs her staff that it's now time to move forward. Growing more desperate to discover his origins, John goes on TV.
You see, a few months ago, I woke up to discover I had no memory of anything.
Do you have any clues whatsoever, anything to go on?
Picture of a woman who called out to me.
Elsewhere, Frank is called to a murder scene.
Scratch on him, but this. So far, no prints, no fibers, no nothing.
Frank finds a hidden room filled with surveillance pictures of John and calls him.
Who is this guy?
Local PI.
Somebody's looking for me. All I have to do is ask.
Sign of blunt trauma, no indications of poisoning.
Great. So he was scared to death.
John continues his investigation.
Bingo. But there's no burn marks.
This man's been electrocuted. Given the low voltage, I'm guessing he was administered continual electric shocks.
Only entry last Wednesday, 10 a.m.
Mount Constance. These are locations.
Madison P.
At the location, John finds pics of the woman from the ferry, finds out the address of her house, and heads there. There, John is shocked to find a family picture of him, the woman, and a young girl. But before he can process this, he's startled by the head of the mysterious company, nicknamed Yellow Teeth.
Ah, the water for my tea. Spritz of lemon, if you would.
This woman in the picture.
Teresa. You were always my favorite, Thomas. So direct.
But before he can manage to do so, John's tased and knocked out, and later finds himself in a cell.
What is this place?
You have questions, I have answers. An ordinary beginning to an extraordinary future on your chests were courtesy of an implanted device responsible for monitoring pH levels. I encourage you to do what you do best. You're free to go. Investigate.
John then heads to the farm in Idaho.
Is that you? Lord Barker. Don't you recognize me?
Mr. Barker then shows John his parents' grave and takes him home. John spends the night at the Barkers, listening to stories from his childhood.
Cookie jar. Read the back. Those same hands made it from you to her.
And the next day, goes around town, meeting people who all seem to have known him and his family. Later, he bids farewell to the welcoming couple and sets off to return home. However, after hours of thinking about it on his drive, John suddenly turns around, heads to Idaho, and is shocked to find the Barker's house completely emptied out. Later, in Seattle, John heads to Teresa's house, finds it swarmed with officers, and is informed that Teresa has committed suicide. However, a suspicious John inspects the bagged body and learns that it's a different woman. He then heads inside the house and is shocked to find that it's been staged to make Teresa to make her look like a hoarder and a stalker.
Portable electric chair. PI's last seat.
Seeing the stress on John, Jamie pulls him aside and advises him to take some time off. A few days later, John decides to take a vacation, gets on a plane, but freaks out due to his claustrophobia. Luckily, with the help of a doctor named Rachel, seated next to him, John calms down a bit and prepares for the flight. Then, a few minutes after takeoff, a man suddenly falls down and dies.
Step away.
Rachel and John start examining the body.
This was no stroke. He was murdered.
Reverend Donald Pearson, Orville, Washington.
Anyone know this man?
I'm a detective. Scotland Yard. I'll be taking charge of this crime scene.
Fresh impact hematoma, white center.
John accidentally injects himself and falls down, and Rachel quickly helps him.
Deep breaths, John. Slow, easy breathing. Calm, easy.
A few minutes later, the co-pilot locked in the toilet, and once John breaks the door open, his bloodied body is discovered.
This time we leave the victim exactly as he was found. Wave the proper way. Inform the captain.
Captain.
Soon, the cockpit is found password locked with no way of contacting the pilot. And before they can come up with a solution, the plane is rocked by turbulence.
Your laptop, is it programmed to run a multiple linear regression program? Sure.
For y equals xp plus e. There. It's still locked.
Come on.
John manages to open the door, and the pilot is found knocked out.
Water must have drained into the air filters. She's shorting out the scrubbers. Will he be able to fly this plane?
We need to oxygenate his blood flow. Get him lucid.
John surprises everyone by flying the plane and stabilizing it, and the detective congratulates him.
ETA, 45 minutes. Autopilot should take it from here.
The team continues its investigation.
You think the killer activated his little poisoned air gun from here? Not working!
Was this section full?
No.
Then this is our complement of suspects.
John then comes up with a theory.
Killer couldn't have been any farther back than this when he let off the air gun. What if he came forward and triggered the poison from one of the unassigned?
John then discovers the intended target.
Rachel Pembroke. Rachel!
Lock him in the bathroom!
John then makes luminol, tests everyone, and once he clears them, he gets valuable information from the flight attendant.
You're an aeronautical engineer, you can fly this thing, right? Pressurizing the hold! No oxygen!
Luckily, John gets there in time to rescue Rachel.
So that you would die the same agonizing death as mine! Don't you come any closer!
And in the aftermath, once everything settles, John and Rachel get to know each other better. One night, a mysterious man breaks into John's house, goes through his things, takes a picture of him while asleep, and manages to exit without being detected. Elsewhere, a dead woman is discovered, and the police, led by the lieutenant, swarm the scene.
Please tell me this one's unrelated.
I wish I could. Victim's name is Veronica Bell.
Frank rushes over to John's house to ask him for help with the serial killer named the Mohr.
Now, the cards all have some strange symbol written on the outside.
A shocked John denies knowing the meaning of the sign or recognizing it. Then Frank presents him with more clues that the killer left behind.
What if 1857 is a time, like military time?
Got him.
John and Frank follow the clues, reach the victim, a man named Lenny, in time, and rescue him, and he's brought back to the station.
Maybe 30, balding, I think. Yeah.
You're safe now, Mr. Pesco. We're going to get you home as soon as we can.
Then, John shows the lieutenant the mark on his body.
Do you mind explaining why this is on every single one of the cards? How do I know you're not the killer?
Because I'm not.
Do you realize he voluntarily showed you the mark, right? Later, Stella subtly asks John out, but he's pulled away to a meeting for the serial killer case. While the police and John scramble to understand the clues, Lenny gives them a lead.
Nah, it's just something I heard, you know, at Blue Light Special. I think the place was called, it's Pervert Row.
Frank, Jamie, and John head to the strip club and find the stage wired with a bomb.
Okay, everybody, I'd like you to file out.
Everybody, I'd like you to stay nice and calm.
Enjoy the show, Mr. John Doe.
John frantically runs around the stage and manages to solve the puzzle in time.
47 seconds left.
Get the explosives unit in here, clear the exterior.
Ciao for now, Doughboy.
While Lenny thanks John and Frank for saving his life and offers to help them any way he can, Frank receives a call from the serial killer.
John Doe, now, underneath the copy machine.
Using the clue, John identifies the bomb in the station, and everyone is ordered to evacuate the building. Later, after the bomb is disarmed, the detectives go through the clue left behind.
Not a condolence card this time.
A box filled with pieces of a jigsaw puzzle is discovered, and John and the police stay up all night working on it to find the next clue. Early the next morning, the team follows the clue to the cross-section, where they find 2 tied-up officers, wired with bombs. The serial killer then calls John with more clues and instructions.
Getting married on Saturday to Phil from Myrtle Beach. If she's still in one piece, contestants are seated on pressure-sensitive switches. When they leave their seat, one see the traffic signal, you have it till the light turns red.
John becomes too frantic, but with the help of Jamie solves the puzzle and rescues the potentially gruesome ordeal. However, he receives a call afterwards, warning him never to cheat on his tests.
I could have killed him. I can't do this anymore.
We're fine.
While the whole precinct scrambles to solve the case, Digger volunteers his services and brings everyone lunch. Then, John comes up with a theory.
Imagine a 64 square grid.
Look, I haven't had any sleep for 2 days, man. What are you talking about here?
However, before they can go ahead with their plan, a terrified officer runs into the room and announces that Stella has just been abducted.
He dragged her out through there, but he never appears on any of the exterior cameras.
Hoping to help, Digger shares his insight into the matter.
You see a map that shows no elevation. Everything's flat. Everything's in 2 dimensions. Now, maybe the reason nobody saw him exit the building is because he hasn't. He's below it.
John heads into the sewer, and after a few minutes of confusion, sees Stella tied up in a tank being filled up with water, and panics. Then, as he proceeds to approach her, he makes a terrifying realization.
Lenny had access to these cables.
Then, Lenny suddenly reveals himself and shows the same mark on his body as John's at the exact same place.
Now's the fun part. You'll notice the lovely Stella, hot pursuit after me, and she sleeps with the fishes.
As Lenny predicted, John opts to rescue Stella instead of going after him and rushes towards her, breaks the tank, and carries her out. Later, once she settles, emboldened by the near-death experience, Stella asks John out to accompany her to the symposium, and he accepts. A few evenings later, Jamie returns home after a long day, pours herself a drink, and heads to the shower. However, as soon as she opens the curtains, she is horrified to see Lenny waiting for her, and before she can react, he drugs and kidnaps her. Later, news of the lieutenant's abduction reaches the police station, and chaos erupts as the officers try to get ahead of the matter.
He'll find something. He will.
I know.
In the morning, Captain Ruiz arrives with his men to take over the station in the lieutenant's absence and asks Frank for an update.
Why this Doe character, huh? Department couldn't handle this internally? Let's tourist John Doe. Yes, sir. Right. Been meaning to have a sit down with him.
Elsewhere, Jamie wakes up and finds herself in a room filled with surveillance pictures of John and boldly asks her captor why he's obsessed with John Doe.
Didn't realize you were officially a Doe groupie. You're not even in the same league. You're Lenny Pesco.
Jamie manages to untie herself, gets a hold of a gun, and threatens Lenny at gunpoint, but it all lasts a few minutes as the serial killer catches her soon after.
Create an emotional diversion for the captor.
Lenny then ties her to the chair once again. Meanwhile, at the station, the captain asks John about every detail of the case and asks him to show him the mark.
Well, looky there. Detective Hayes' judgment is cloudy when it comes to you.
The captain watches Frank as he heads inside to question John and gets a call.
Yeah. Right.
In the interrogation room, against his best judgment, Frank questions his friend John.
We're making headway on the footprint analysis. Stu's got a report.
The captain then decides to keep John there and leaves with Frank. Once alone, John uses his wit to break out of the interrogation room. John then disguises himself as a cop, leaves the precinct, and heads to the bar to see Digger.
This happened because of me.
Listen to me. Now is not the time for us to feel. Or stay in the shadows. Don't let anybody see you.
Oh, what a friend. As soon as Digger steps away, Lenny appears out of nowhere and startles John, who quickly recovers and reacts.
She's still alive.
For the time being.
Not a game. You're playing with people's lives.
Then, as cops start swarming the bar, Lenny disappears as mysteriously as he had appeared. Meanwhile, at the station, the desperate captain drives everyone hard to find something.
Database tells us it's similar to a cross-trainer.
Lenny's been ahead of us every move. Smells to me like he planned this to throw us off.
Hearing this, Captain Ruiz pulls Frank aside.
Think I'm a hard ass, Frank? Think I'm riding you for putting all your eggs in with dough before?
But I've been living and breathing this case.
Then maybe you're too close.
Meanwhile, John and Digger head to the sewers. Following his gut, John then goes to the first place Lenny was discovered.
So he hangs like a bat in the sewers, risking certain death.
In the interrogation room, Lenny tries to play on Jamie's emotions and reminds her how alone she is in the world after losing her lieutenant fiancé.
But look at the bright side. You only have 6 more hours of it to endure.
Meanwhile, John quietly sneaks into his house, but is surprised to find Frank waiting for him.
You here to take me in?
No. I'm here to find Jamie.
At the station, Stella updates the captain on the shoe print found on the crime scene, which Frank and John had suspected was left behind on purpose.
I want an assault unit ready in 30 minutes. I think we can make it just in time. Let's go!
Then, Frank receives an update from the station and shares it with John.
Address in the warehouse district. Got SWAT on the move.
John spends time studying the oxygen canister closely.
It's a rebreather. Lenny used it in the sewer to keep himself from drowning.
He then hacks into a database and gets valuable information.
142 Water Street, Old King County Ice Company.
We got your ass, Lenny.
Elsewhere, while Ruiz leads officers to the location, Frank calls to warn him and inform him that it's a trap. But soon, a massive explosion shakes the grounds.
Bye-bye.
We got 15 minutes at most.
Once finished with everything they need for their plan, John and Frank head out, and the detective gives John a gun.
You're not going in there without protection.
I'm not licensed to carry a weapon.
As John enters the room, he is surprised to find Lenny waiting for him with excitement.
Come on. Outsmart me. Bamboozle me, please.
Exasperated by the cruel serial killer, Frank proceeds to shoot him, but is shocked to see John jump ahead of the bullet, get struck, and fall down.
No! John, no.
Then, John's funeral is arranged, attended by Digger, Stella, Karen, Jamie, and Frank, who all seem heartbroken by the tragedy. That night, Lenny rushes over to the graveyard, and while trying to calm himself by reciting that it's all a lie and John is really alive, he digs up the grave, but is horrified to see John's body inside. Then, Lenny steps out of the grave to inspect the curious sounds and gets the shock of his life.
I knew we'd never catch you while you controlled the game, Lenny. Works just as well underground as underwater.
Just as Lenny's about to be cuffed, he paper sprays the officer, holds him at gunpoint, and walks down to the underground.
You want to write your epitaph, Lenny?
Later, everyone celebrates the feat at the bar, and Jamie takes time out to speak to John.
I thought you might like this. Found it in the ice house. He took pictures of you sleeping. All part of the game.
Then, following John's invitation, Jamie continues hanging out with the group, playing darts, and enjoying herself. A few days later, Rachel comes into town, heads to the bar to meet John, who follows her prompts and asks her out. Rachel accepts the dinner date and leaves, while John, the man who knows everything, panics, not knowing how to proceed and prepare for the date.
Okay. Still breathing. Where do I take her? What restaurant?
On the other side of the city, at a crowded club, after addressing his adoring fans, a very famous DJ named Turney mysteriously drops dead, and the police are alerted. Meanwhile, John heads to the station to ask John for dating advice, but soon learns of the mysterious case.
Incision scar in the neck.
He bit off part of his tongue during the convulsions. It explains all of the blood.
Later that evening, John prepares and arrives at Rachel's door on time. The duo then proceeds to head to their date.
You know, I'm a simple girl.
Greasy fish and chips suits me just fine.
Following the conversation quite literally, John takes Rachel fishing. The couple spends the rest of the night dancing under the sky and enjoying themselves. The next morning, at the station, the team reviews footage of the DJ's party and studies it.
Quality's terrible, even for a bootleg.
It's just before Turney collapses. And this line, why does it deviate from the rest?
John follows the line cautiously to see where it leads and makes a terrifying discovery.
I don't hear anything.
That's why it's the perfect murder weapon.
Seeing Frank's hesitation to accept the theory, John brings in Rachel to ask for her professional opinion.
There are a number of everyday items that can produce these frequencies. The frequency thought to be most dangerous to humans is between 7 and 8 hertz.
Frank and John head out to speak to Turney's producer, Charlotte.
I knew he took medication, but I never asked what it was for. So talk to PJ Fox.
PJ Fox, his attorney, right?
Later, Frank and John head to the lawyer, PJ.
Now, I know this is rude, gentlemen, but I am late for a dinner meeting.
That's suspicious, PJ. The duo then discreetly follows PJ to the club, sees him playing with the band, and brings him in for questioning. Meanwhile, hoping to find his past in any way he can, John contacts a man and heads into a sound specialization chamber to see if any sounds elicit a memory. After hours, John finds something.
Nothing. No memories.
At the station, Jamie interrogates PJ.
The stuffed shirts in my firm wouldn't exactly look kindly on my nighttime gig.
Word is that Turney was about to throw you a pink slip.
That's not true.
Fox kicked out a name. Lloyd Kraft, one prior assault charge.
The duo then rushes to Lloyd's house.
So little raver girls shell out their allowances on posters and t-shirts.
Then they check out his computer and the files and find audio sent to Turney.
Getting scared, Turney? I'll laugh when you die.
That night, John spends hours researching ragweed, wondering why he remembered it. Later, Rachel comes to John's house for dinner and spends hours helping John taste different things and discovering what he likes. Then, hearing her recount her childhood memories, John tries hard to associate the tastes with a memory, but fails miserably.
Don't take this the wrong way. Please don't. I think perhaps I should leave.
Elsewhere, a cleaner finds PJ dead, and the body is taken to the coroner.
Throw in the fact that he was suing Turney and Fox got it thrown out?
Motive enough for me, let's go.
Later, John finds Stella still trying to figure out the high-pitched noise and suddenly comes up with an idea.
Not odd for a closed-off studio.
Having cracked the case, John heads to the studio.
You recorded feedback from the speakers, slowed it down to make infrasound.
Charlotte runs out of the room, locks John inside, and rushes away. John spends a few minutes thinking about a solution and uses high-frequency sound to break windows and escape. John then calls Frank.
But she's on the move! Hurry!
After an intense chase, John catches Charlotte, who is arrested. Later that night, following Frank's advice, John makes a grand romantic gesture and makes up with Rachel. One afternoon, while walking with her younger sister, a teenager named Lisa vanishes into thin air. Meanwhile, at Frank's home, Frank and his estranged wife throw a birthday party for their young son, Tyler. Soon, Frank discovers that he had forgotten to pay and book the clown the kids desperately wanted to have and freaks out.
No answer. I left a message with the duck quack. No, your problem, Frank, is that you're so busy trying to save other people's kids that you don't give a damn about your own.
Seeing Frank's distress, John puts on a show and entertains the kids with balloon animals. And while a relieved Frank tries to convince his soon-to-be ex-wife that all is well, he gets a call about the kidnapping.
I don't believe this.
They find a hair clip in the woods and rush over to inspect it. At the station, Frank goes through case files and makes a startling discovery.
Say we got ourselves a serial kidnapper. And somebody should have figured this out before this.
Frank then rushes to check on the progress of Stella and John's research.
Anything? We've noticed some granule-like particles in the oil.
After hours of digging, skeletal remains are discovered.
Looks like 4. 2 small children.
Then, Nance learns that none of them is Lisa.
I really don't think this is a Kodak moment.
We'll see about that.
John then fascinates everyone by building a forensic 3-dimensional facial reconstruction of the victims, notes the similar features among them, and learns that they are a family.
He's snatching up duplicates of the dead family.
1244 Lawndale Avenue.
Lawndale Avenue.
Team rushes to Gary's house to speak to him.
I don't understand. Who are you talking about?
Kidnap victims.
Gary is then taken to the station.
Free to call a lawyer if you like.
God, what for? I can't resist looking at other people's coins.
Then, Jamie's informed that Gary has been grocery shopping for a family and wonders where he's keeping the victims.
I'm gonna good cop this guy, bad cop's not flying.
That evening, A frustrated Frank comes to John's house and shares how nervous he is for the custody hearing the next morning.
Got an idea. Or two, about exactly what you should say to the judge tomorrow.
Frank studies all night and gives an impassioned speech at the hearing, promising to make more time for his children. Meanwhile, John comes up with an idea and has Gary released, hoping he can lead them to his victims while he and Frank follow him.
I just get carried away.
Hearing their arrival, Gary tries to gas the family with chloroform, but soon it all backfires as the duo breaks in, rescues the family, but finds the culprit dead. Later, as they all hang out at the bar, Frank happily shares that his wife has agreed to share custody and thanks John for his help. A few days later, Digger and John accompany a nervous Karen to the gallery, see some of her work, and tell her how proud they are of her.
I'm glad I fired you from the bar way back when. Regardless of what those critics think, you got my vote.
Soon, the all-important announcement is made.
This year's scholarship recipient is Karen Kowalski!
Later, John and Karen return to the loft and are shocked to find it robbed, with the office and all of John's personal investigations and discoveries emptied out.
The clock is ticking.
Damn right.
John?
If I take my hand off the mouse, it'll blow.
With Karen's hands on the mouse, John rushes out to the electric pole. There, he manages to turn off the power with 2 seconds left on the timer. John breathes a sigh of relief, rushes back inside, but is terrified to learn of Karen's disappearance, and the police are called. Then, as the initial examination of the scene is underway, John is shocked to learn that the bomb was fake, and Jamie questions him.
Question is, are they willing to kill her?
Soon, a panicked Digger joins John's efforts to find Karen, and at the station, John becomes frantic, trying to come up with an idea.
Digger's already on that, and you need to relax.
They rush as fast as they can, and are horrified to find the driver's lifeless, bloodied in the interrogation room, with a phone next to it.
Hello. It's connecting. Transmitting some kind of tone.
Deep in the woods, the Phoenix organization staff demands that Karen give them information and threatens her.
You know him best, his secrets. It is a simple question.
At the station, the team continues working hard.
DMV Cross gives us Shuley, Robert L., Esquire.
Then, when the team reaches the location, the lawyer panics and flees.
We lost Mr. So-and-so Esquire here, but we had backup and air support here and here.
The team then reaches the factory and is horrified to find a group of people dead in an apparent mass suicide. John is then shocked to find a picture of Teresa and wonders what it all means.
I didn't tell you that I can see her in color.
John steps out alone, his mind occupied by Teresa and how she fits into all of this, and soon men ambush and kidnap him. He is then taken to a discreet location where a man named Sam introduces himself.
I implore you to talk to me. If not for your sake, for Miss Kowalski's.
John refuses to talk, and the duo sits in silence for hours. Desperate to convince John to speak to him, Sam explains himself.
What do you know about her? If you had anything to... I swear to God!
That's what he's been trying to figure out for himself, Sam. Meanwhile, in the woods, Karen attacks the man, steals a phone, escapes, and calls John.
Karen, what do you see? Tell me what you see.
Unfortunately, the man catches up with her soon and drags her back inside. Meanwhile, feeling cornered, John agrees to work together with Sam, who invites a panel to demonstrate John's abilities. However, suspicious of his motives, John underplays his intelligence and exasperates Sam, who's forced to free him by his bosses.
By the way, population of Olympia as of the 2000 U.S. Census.
Later at home, John figures out Karen is on Horseshoe Island, but unfortunately, unbeknownst to him, someone finds out his discovery through a hidden camera and warns the Phoenix. Then, John and Digger set out on a speedboat. But once they get there and see no sign of anyone, John freaks out.
Man, this place has got some serious bad juju.
The duo is then horrified to find Karen's lifeless body and is heartbroken. They soon return to the city, and John gets a wall painted with Karen's work in her honor and adopts her cat. Later, in his thoughts, John quietly apologizes to Karen for getting her tangled up and killed and promises to get to the bottom of her death and avenge her. Then John hears a knock on his door.
No name, no identification. Transferred from the hospital a few weeks ago.
You gotta stop meeting like this. You are the Phoenix.
What? What do you mean by that? In the next few days, John spends sleepless nights being plagued by nightmares about Karen's death. One morning, a missing girl's case arrives at the station.
Last seen at the campus cafeteria where she works.
While everyone rushes to get ahead of the case, a psychic named Delphine walks into the station.
I know where they are. Come again?
As Jamie and John await, Delphine leads them into the woods, and a body is discovered. John studies files at the station and tries to figure out the case.
Now, we got anything new from the Psychic Friends Network?
Not yet.
Skeptical Jamie brings up Delphine's past and questions why she hasn't helped find the girls before they died, which offends Delphine into storming out. Meanwhile, John uses deduction and logic and demonstrates how Delphine managed to lead them to the woods.
Case of deduction. She was wearing a charm bracelet with them on it.
Then, seeing Frank arriving with the third victim, Connie's personal effects, Delphine makes a startling announcement.
Connie! She's here.
At the cafeteria, John follows Delphine into a room, and upon his touch, she screams bloody murder as if she saw something in him. Meanwhile, the team continues working on the case.
This rack must have gotten her away when she punched out. The stab stood at a slight angle.
Unfortunately, soon, Connie is found dead, and John rushes to the station. John approaches Delphine and talks to her about their last encounter.
I do have these moments of connection.
Then, Delphine gets visions. The officers then rush to the park.
There, what's that?
Remembering his earlier convo with Delphine, John realizes something and approaches her.
You knew of this place because you were here. Your scar matches the victim's wounds exactly.
Meanwhile, the team continues to work on the case.
Delphine didn't know it at the time, but she was remembering her own experience.
Hoping to get the details from the memories she has blocked for years, John hypnotizes Delphine.
Who are you? The parking lot, the corridor. Delphine.
However, despite her best efforts, Delphine fails to remember his face. Elsewhere, the killer sees Delphine's involvement on the news and wonders how she's still alive. While on the other side, John escorts Delphine to her apartment and posts an officer outside to guard her. John then gets a sudden breakthrough.
We're down to 42 names.
And now we're looking at a list of outside people.
Must have missed Delphine's artery. It's the only way she could have survived.
Unfortunately, the officer outside the apartment is soon killed, and Delphine is abducted. At the farm, Delphine screams her lungs out and tries to escape. Soon, the police arrive. John rescues her, but then gets overpowered by the killer. Delphine then shoots and kills her assailant and frees John, whom she thanks profusely.
Interesting choice of words.
That sprang to mind.
Later, John gifts Karen's cat to Delphine, and she embraces it joyfully. One night, a group of teenagers hangs out in the woods and is spooked by a bright light that comes out of the sky. Soon, a figure starts walking towards them, and they shoot it down out of fear. They then inspect the figure closely and are horrified to learn that the figure is of an astronaut.
No luck getting the helmet off yet.
At the station, Nance and the team examine the body.
Gloves themselves cost up to $40,000.
However, soon, a colonel named Dunnigan barges in with his men.
We'll need you to hand over all the evidence you've obtained in this case.
Be glad he didn't ask you who you are, John. Despite the resistance, the colonel has the body escorted away. Later at the bar, while Digger, Frank, and John discuss the peculiar case, they hear the news.
It's him.
Emergency crews.
The astronaut.
But there was no accident. What are you trying to cover up? Intrigued by the lie, the trio starts investigating the incident.
How do you know all this stuff?
Just see if you can hack into it.
Then John finds something that shocks him.
Looks like something burned right through the tree line.
The trio then takes their disturbing discovery to Jamie.
I woke up naked on that island.
As Jamie tries to wrap her head around this, John throws out more ideas.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's no more ridiculous than what I live with every day.
Then, hoping to clear things up, Jamie visits the colonel.
I'm just looking for a little clarity. We could assist in the investigation if you would give us access to the body.
Why would you cremate a body with a pending investigation? Meanwhile, Digger, Frank, and John head into the woods, carefully navigating the security traps. At the station, hoping to understand him better, Stella and Jamie look into the colonel's past.
You're clearly in distress, sir.
In the woods, the trio finds a dome-shaped pod and breaks in.
Just like the first astronaut we found.
Cyanosis.
As soon as the words leave Frank's mouth, the doors close and lock them inside. Meanwhile, worried by the radio silence, Jamie speaks to the colonel's chief sergeant.
What kind of man is the colonel? Easy to work for?
Jamie then asks Stella to check out the colonel's financial history.
There's a newly formed corporation registered under the colonel's name.
While in the pod, Digger finds something peculiar.
You'll blow us up.
We want to light it back, John.
No.
Then the trio suddenly turns on one another.
Now, how the hell are we going to get out of here, genius? Look out like... Are you out of your mind?
Luckily, before it escalates further, John realizes something.
You just want to see if this case can help you to figure out who you are.
I think we're classic symptoms of cyanosis.
Stella and Jamie continue their investigation and soon locate the dome, from which John sends a Morse code message.
He just told us how the colonel caused the cyanosis in our dead astronaut.
The duo continues searching for the meaning of the code while John and the men fall down. Then, when the code stops suddenly, Jamie panics and rushes to the colonel.
My friends are dying out there.
The colonel takes Jamie to a restricted area and shows her feed, but is soon shocked to learn that the footage is not live and promises to take care of the matter. Then, the staff sergeant arrives at the pod.
But you should be dead. Isn't that what you had in mind?
Well, you definitely fooled me, guys. The staff sergeant is arrested and questioned by Jamie.
And to top it off, you killed your own men.
Meanwhile, outside the interrogation, the men apologize for the mean things they said about one another and clear the air. A few days later, an unidentified body comes into Nance's office.
Picked him up in an alley behind Harrison Homeless Shelter.
As soon as they leave, the man wakes up and takes in his environment. Moments later, Jamie's informed and rushes to the morgue.
I had every reason to pull that guy's badge. He was a loose cannon. Well, he's certainly not anymore.
There, they are all shocked to see that the body had seemingly disappeared, and soon they found a footprint. Jamie has the place thoroughly searched while John tries to get to the bottom of the ordeal.
I'm gonna go see if Rothman had any family contacts, someone who can give me a clue here.
John and Nance trace the footprint to a locker room uniform in which the man had put on some clothes and escaped into the air ducts.
Phone's dead.
Computer network just went down.
But the officers are beaten to the task.
If you would, let's avoid a bloodbath.
Then Ken takes Jamie aside to speak to her.
Okay, everybody over there, down on the ground. Now, let's go.
While John devises a plan to cut the wire and free everyone, Ken forces Jamie to call Captain Ruiz.
Online, it's true. He's on his way over and wants to know what you're asking for.
Then, John manages to cut the wire, freeing the officers, and chaos ensues as the criminals try to get control of the situation. Hearing the gunshots, Ken locks Jamie in the interrogation room and leaves to check what's going on. There, Ken and the men manage to subdue everyone except John, who has managed to drift away and hide in the air ducts and lead them to a room. However, soon Ken notices John's absence and sends his men after him. While outside, Captain Ruiz, his men, and the media surround the station and follow the ordeal closely. Moments later, a terrified Frank learns of the incident and rushes to help in any way he can.
I'll play along, but for show.
John Hinn crawls around, steals a phone, devises a way, connects, and calls Frank.
Holding 14 hostages.
From inside, John manages to get the authorities' live feed of what's going on, and soon the captain calls Ken.
Speak to Jamie Avery.
Well, I'd like my career back.
Moments later, a cavalry arrives outside. John continues crawling around the air ducts, and using his wit and intelligence, disarms 2 of Ken's men and ties them up. Then, John ambushes Ken, but is forced to stand down when Ken threatens him with a vial of the virus and orders him to free the 2 men. Outside, Frank learns of Ken's shocking game plan.
Too little, too late.
Bodies start raining out the windows.
Inside, Ken makes a shocking, aggressive move with a vial.
And your pal here gets to join you for being such a royal pain in my ass.
He then breaks a vial in the room and leaves the duo to face certain death. Luckily, the duo manages to free themselves soon.
How are you doing?
C8, H8, O3.
Maybe you wanted the area evacuated. Cleaner getaway.
Outside, Frank and the captain inspect the CDC truck and make a troubling realization.
All the vaccine and sent us chasing a decoy.
Elsewhere, on the port, Ken's notified that the police are on their way and advised to abort his mission. However, before he can react, the police swarm the port and catch him. The next day at the station, everyone applauds and appreciates John for everything he's done. A woman named Paulette heads to the bank, receives a suitcase with no key or lock, and leaves disappointed. Then, when she gets to the parking lot, she's attacked, and the suitcase is stolen, and the assailant speeds away in her car. Desperate, Paulette visits John at the bar.
The briefcase belonged to Stefano Moretti.
The software billionaire?
John agrees to take the case and promises she will have it back tomorrow.
I knew you were the one.
John hacks into the system, tracks Paulette's car, but is confused to learn that it's parked at Stefano's house. John and Digger go to Stefano's smart house and find a dead man.
Burn marks on the hands match the shape of the door handle.
At the station, Stella hacks into the house's system and sees it telling the thief to exit.
Now let's jump ahead to the part where 2 civilians trespassed and found this dead body.
Then, As the group reels from seeing the footage of the electrocution, a man appears and makes a shocking announcement.
The answer was the culmination of Moretti's life's work. He wanted to translate the human mind into computer code.
Then, when the system shuts the group out, Digger steps up and hacks it, shocking everyone.
You just hacked into a system designed by one of the best programming minds in the world.
John and Frank head to the address, find Paulette, and bring her in for questioning.
He's the one. He took the briefcase.
Seems like quite a few people want the case.
Then Jamie and John discuss Paulette.
She knows more than she's letting on.
John returns to the location where men fight him for the suitcase, fends them off, and realizes that the key is on Paulette's charm bracelet. After opening, Paulette and John inspect the contents closely, find a clue, and head to the mission building, where they are shocked to see corpses being experimented on.
In the research community, we refer to that as a lose-win situation via the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act.
At the station, the team fails to find anything in the briefcase.
Meantime, we have an ID on our electrocution victim from the Smart House. He's a J.J. Marks.
Elsewhere, after noticing an unusual barcode in Pallett's room, John rushes back to the station.
God, there's millions of lines. Who knows how each batch fits with the next?
The hacker then demands that John bring the suitcase to him.
Kind of religious computer fanatic.
And the next day, John sets out to meet him, manages to outsmart and stay a step ahead of him, and catches him. Joe Hansen is taken in for interrogation.
I would have spared no one for that case, and I would have been right.
Meanwhile, John finds a way to get to the answer.
My name is Stefano Moretti, waiting to find a new home in a new body.
Elsewhere, using sign language, a man tells the lab scientist he will contact them about John Doe soon and gives him a duffel bag. One night, John leaves the bar and is struck by lightning.
Mr. Doe? Can you hear me?
Elsewhere, the body of a man killed by two mysterious figures is discovered, and the police are called.
Hey, Mark, what's the body telling us?
Victim had 5 teeth knocked out.
Meanwhile, Digger looks after a groggy John, who makes a terrifying realization.
I can see it in color. The hair, it's dark brown. I can see it in color.
Comforted by Digger's words, John heads to the police station.
Your eyes, they're green.
During the investigation, now that he can see in color, John has a hard time looking at the corpses and the blood and struggles. Seeing this, Jamie advises him to take some rest, and he leaves. However, with his knowledge all gone, he has trouble driving and has difficulty getting home. Once there, John appreciates Karen's beautiful paintings, which he has never seen in color, until his broker, Max, pays him a surprise visit.
I assume when you didn't call me this morning, you just wanted to let the options roll over?
John then heads to the bar, and a bar attendant asks him a question.
Digger, you tell her.
Suspicious of the interaction, Digger tries to find out what's going on.
Feeling a little freaked out, naked.
Digger comforts John and makes him feel better. Then, when John returns home, he finds a note on his doorstep.
Dear John Doe,
I'm your biggest fan.
He then opens the box and is horrified to find the victim's missing kidney. John reports this, but as the investigation goes on, he fails to keep up with the pace or knowledge needed, and attributing it to his recent accident, Jamie sends him home once more, which offends him. At home, Digger comes to check on John and find what caused it.
Like the brand acted like some kind of lightning rod.
So what do you think it is, a microchip or something?
John then starts reading books and referring materials, just like normal people, to help out on the case. However, the deadline passes, and 2 more people are killed at midnight.
So what about the timing? Were these 2 men killed together?
Meanwhile, John heads to the bar and meets Max.
The Patagonian cattle futures you had me hang on to, they're worthless. I remember the good old days. You know, those Poseska Bank of futures.
A few days later, while John continues feeling useless and wallowing, he finds a message written on his door in blood, warning that he is the next victim. At the bar, seeing a scared woman, John offers to walk her to her car, but is ambushed by the mysterious figure.
Why is it men always underestimate the power of women?
As the women attack John, they are shocked to see that he is wearing a wire which has captured everything, and he flees, which forces him to run after them along with the police. John is electrocuted in the process.
John, are you all right? John!
I'm back.
Must have been the fall combined with the electrical shock.
A few days later, a man climbs out of a barbed fence, runs onto a street, and is killed. At the bar, Digger hears of the accident on the news and is devastated.
His name's Jay Dugan, my brother.
John looks at Jay's picture and is shocked to see him in color. Then, hoping to get to the bottom of everything, John and Digger go to the sheriff's department of the small town and see Jay's body. As soon as John sees the lifeless body of Jay, the color disappears. Then, the duo asks for Jay's personal belongings.
Interesting. What, ground cover?
Outside, as the duo proceeds to leave, they see the pendant in the woods and follow the track around, which leads them to the Seneca Institute, which offers services to gifted individuals who have suffered emotional and mental breakdowns. The duo then returns to the morgue, re-examines Jay's body, and John is shocked to see his teeth have no enamel and his tongue is tagged. Desperate to find answers, John impersonates a psychologist, while Digger is disguised as a patient and finds their way into the institute. There, John finally gets his hands on Jay's file, but before he can go through it, he sees a room full of patients being experimented on to develop remote viewing. Then, as John heads out, he sees a blind young man playing music and enters his room to talk to him. As soon as he hears John's footsteps, Michael continues his work and draws John's mark, which flabbergasts John.
Forget what I said about the lack of security.
Amidst the chaos, John sneaks Michael out as a patient, and the duo takes him to a local motel where they ask him some questions.
Would you trust a ghost to tell it your secrets?
Michael then reveals that his tongue has been tagged like Jay's.
It's a program for the special ones, the ones.
Soon, the duo finds the spy cam, runs out to see who's lurking in the shadows of the dark, and finds Sam.
Sit down! Sit down! My friend died out there, so you better start talking.
The duo then returns to the motel and is horrified to see that Michael has been abducted. They then rush to the institute and find that patients have been trapped inside while the building has been set on fire, and heroically jump in to save as many as they can and find Michael. However, Michael is nowhere to be found, and Sam is forced to jump in and rescue John, who refuses to give up looking for him.
Where's Michael?
Gone. Elsewhere, a man wearing a beanie and a trench coat oversees an experiment on Teresa and Michael, who has chosen John as the next target of study. One evening, John starts experiencing visions he can't make sense of and finds himself in the woods. Then, a disgruntled and fed-up John returns to the bar.
What do you think, your memory's popping up again? Something.
Later, John returns home and finally figures out that his visions are of the power lines. And as he starts to process this, Frank calls and informs him that they have discovered a body at the power lines.
I'm guessing you got a good reason for asking.
Not really. Just popped into my head.
Did its intended job. No facial or prints to work an ID.
Meanwhile, at a new location, Michael draws the same power line from John's visions. John goes to the location and finds the power line drawing, and as he studies that, he's startled by Sam.
Give me a break. Following intel leads. Owns this place, been posing as a potential Phoenix recruit.
The duo chase the mysterious man around and catch him before he can kill himself.
And the bird falls from the sky.
The duo then agrees to work together and starts questioning the man.
What's the Phoenix group up to?
Annoyed, John attacks the man, forcing Sam to intervene. What are you talking about, John? To force the man's hand, John turns up a painful high-frequency sound, and soon the man breaks character.
You will learn nothing from me.
The man and John alternate between 3 languages as they speak, and the man informs John that he's chosen to complete his destiny, and nothing will get in the way. But soon the interaction gets heated.
Where's Teresa? You'll never find her. We're invisible.
To find out who else the man was talking about, Sam pulls up footage of Michael.
People, sometimes things, it changes.
While the group is distracted, the man mentally unlocks the cuffs and escapes. Later, Sam introduces John to a former CIA agent named Lucas, who spends hours testing John's ability before helping him locate Teresa and Michael through his mind.
All right, enough with pennies and pyramids. Let's get on to the grown-up stuff.
I can see. It's a tunnel. Compromise.
Just as the operation is about to start, Jamie and Frank arrive.
You really think you found Phoenix?
I know I found them.
Sam briefs everyone on the operation.
Primary targets. The individual on the left is our escape artist. All right, let's get it done.
Then, just as the escaped man rejoins his men, officers swarm the Phoenix location and chaos erupts. The man kills Michael, while the mysterious head of the organization takes Teresa and tries to flee. John spots this from afar, follows them, and after a brutal struggle, manages to free Teresa, who is overjoyed to be reunited with Tommy. Then, as the leader proceeds to escape on the ladder, he drops his beanie, and John is shell-shocked to see Digger's face staring back at him.